Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And being asukim b'divrei Torah, busying ourselves in words of Torah is, in a way, such a refuge. It feels like a big refuge these days. So let's take a look. I'm going to share the screen. And of course, we are involved in one of the most beautiful pieces of narration in the entire Bible, the story of Joseph. And we are at this point, he is in prison, having been framed by Potiphar's wife. And we just read how he has gotten to be with the chief's wine steward or cupbearer, however you want to translate Sar HaMashkim, and the chief baker of Pharaoh, who have given offense, and they are in prison now. And they've had dreams. Each one of them has had a dream, and it's been a disturbing dream. And Vayar otam v'hinam zoafim, and Joseph saw them the next morning, and he saw that they were distraught. That's the way Safaria, their translation of zoafim. So it can, yeah. Vayishal Etzrisei Pharaoh. So he inquired these servants of Pharaoh. A saris actually literally means a eunuch, okay, of Pharaoh. Asher ito b'mishmar beit Adonav Lamor, who were with him in the guard house or the prison, the jail, the house of his master, saying, Madua pnechem ra'im hayom. Why are your faces? Ra, of course, is a general adjective for bad. So again, Sfaria suggests downcast. Sounds like a really good translation. Why are your faces downcast today? And I don't believe there's no Rashi on this. So going on. Vayomru elav, and they said to him, Chalom chalamnu, we dreamt a dream, we dreamt dreams. Ufoter ein oto, literally it does mean a dream we dreamt, and there is none to interpret it, none to interpret it. Vayomer aleihem Yosef, and Joseph said to them. And in some ways, this sentence is so, it gives us a perception because Joseph, this is perhaps the first time in the whole story that we say, Halo leElohim Pitronim. He says to them, God, Elohim, has interpretations. Doesn't God have the interpretations? Sapruna li. Please tell me. Tell me. But the fact that he introduces the idea of a transcendent level of existence here. The first time we see this in the story, an idea of transcendence. And it's interesting that in this story, we don't find God mentioned at pretty much at all until later on when Jacob goes down to Egypt or before he goes down to Egypt. And I think that the Torah is trying to help us understand, to be able to perceive the ways of the divine within the way life works out. Yeah, Judith.
When you say transcendence, is that because he mentions, I don't get the transcendence connection with God here.
Okay, so the idea of transcendence is that there's something beyond reality, beyond objective reality, that really is at play in how objective reality works out. So being aware, being sensitive, being open to a transcendent level of existence is to say, the fact that I can think, the fact that I have intelligence is because I was given that intelligence by something else. It didn't just originate with me, but that there's another reason and another level of existence that makes these things possible. And my sense is that in saying that God is interpretations, right? Pitronim, or explanations, that ultimately this is where the explanations are to be found, and that if he has this ability, right? If Joseph has this ability, Joseph is acknowledging that this ability is coming from something outside of himself, which is essentially our attempt to live modestly and having an inner sense of humility, that ultimately none of these things are really ours, at least at their origin. And Judith, please follow up if you feel I need
Well,
to.
what I appreciate that, and I think God speaks directly to Abraham, particularly with what I'm
Yes,
remembering awareness of it concerning Sodom and Amorah.
exactly, and elsewhere.
But well, he talks with Abraham. The others don't seem, Isaac and Jacob don't seem to have conversations with God directly.
Um, well, Jacob definitely does. Remember when he says to
Because
God,
his
"You'll
dream.
give me food to eat and clothing," you know what I mean? So maybe not so much with Isaac, but we do have in the story, in the narrative, places where God speaks directly to them. Whereas in this story, we don't have, I don't know, at any point, God speaking directly. That is in the narrative, it says that God said to Joseph. We don't have, whereas we do have God said to Jacob and God said to Isaac.
Okay, so is this in some sense a new awareness or connection to God?
I don't know that it's necessary. It could be. I don't know that that's the direction I would necessarily go. On the other hand, please excuse me. Forgive me. I think that the Torah in its narration and in its brilliance is moving us to a point where we can recognize the divine without having to have it be stated, explicitly. That there's a realization of the level on which the divine operates, and that the story brings that out just so beautifully.
Well,
So,
I never thought of it that way, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah. I mean, that's probably the reason why so few people, or at least why so many people don't believe in God anymore, is that they're not open to realizing that that the reason for all these amazing elements of life and technology and things like that are actually gifts from the divine, that they all come from a divine source, and that the fact that nature even operates the way it does is also part of a transcendent level, and all these kinds of things that we sort of, I think, in a way, I think this metaphor comes from the mystical tradition, is that our reality represents God's thinking us. In other words, the way in which the divine is thinking of us. And what I like about that is we tend to see our objective reality as so real and hard and durable and stuff like that, and it isn't. And it isn't. So,
But I don't think that that's, I mean, I think that's a simple and not fair explanation of why many people don't believe in God, because I think that evil plays a part in, trying to understand that, because if you're understanding a transcendent, being
mhm,
involved in everything good, what do you do with the parts that are difficult, like
right.
war and famine and genocide and
Thank you. I'm glad you raised that. And yes, of course, it's a simplistic, what I'm saying is simplistic, and I cannot run away from that. But I think what you're going to bring out then is why we don't just leave it as Adonai, which represents that transcendent level, but also the Elohim. And the Elohim is the part that we bring in attributing God's greatness and a combination of kindness and justice, which, that in some ways they're opposites, in accepting God not only as Adonai, but as Elohim. And that Elohim part, Lauren, it addresses, and again, if you were to accuse me of being overly simplistic, I would have to accept the accusation. I'm just trying to give some directions, but that's my understanding. And that's another reason why we say Eloheinu as opposed to Adonai, right? Why we say Eloheinu, because it's through us that we accept we see adversity and these things as divine judgment, and that God is a just, that somehow to trust that. And it doesn't mean that we have to be quietists. I mean, essentially, the question is, what do we learn from these things? And I think, you and I both agree that we have to look into ourselves first, and then, once we've done that, at least address that part of the homework, then perhaps, move out to where we are able to affect the world outside of ourselves. But in a way, it's all organically connected. So I hope that at least mitigates a little bit my oversimplification. All right, unless you want to keep going on that, we can keep going here. So we had this word zoafim, distraught, and we have, let's see, we had that before. Forgive me, I kind of lost my place now. So here we go. Here we go. Vice, just want to make sure I'm covering everything here. Yes. Right. The next time we have is verse 10. Vaysaper sar hamashkim et chalomo leYosef. So the chief cupbearer, the chief wine steward, told his dream to Joseph. Vayomer lo, and he said to him, B'chalomi, in my dream, v'hinei gefen lefanai, behold a grapevine before me. In other words, I saw this grapevine in my dream. Uva gefen, and on the vine, shlosha sarigim, there were 3 branches. Vehi keforachat alata. The Hebrew here is not easy here, but what it means, and that is this grapevine, or these keporachat. So that has to do with a perach, right? So somehow alata. So we'll take a look at the Rashi, because frankly, I think we really need the help here. But I think it means like budding. Buds were appearing. But I think I will do, we'll see how Rashi does this, and hopefully I will do a better job here. So srigim, zmorot, this is a word that's more common, which are vine shoots. Aruchot, long vine shoots, are srigim. Shekorin, and apparently this was from Safaria VT. I do not recognize the French here at all. Okay. Vehi keporachat, and the ka means like, right, as, something like that. It's a comparison of some kind. So, dome, so it looks like leporachat, one that is flowering or budding or something like that. Vehi keporachat nidmeli bechalomi, and in my dream it appeared to me as if it was budding, right, flowering. Ki'ilu hi porachat, as if it is budding. V'achar haperach, and after this bud, I'm going to translate, even though parachim are understood as flowers, but for the sake of the context here, I'm going to try and translate it as a bud. Something was sprouting there. Alta nitza, arose its blossom. So that's alta or alata. V'ne'esa smadar, and it became smadar, or unripe grapes, budding grapes. And here is the French. Apparently, I didn't write down, but Lauren, maybe you have a better version of that old French in your edition.
Mine says Aspanier.
Espanier.
Aspanir.
Okay.
Aspanier.
Espanier. Okay. I mean, it sounds more like it could be Espanier, but I haven't looked at it.
There's no
I know it's an A, not an E. Right.
it's an N, not an Y.
Yeah, right. Oh, okay. At any rate, Rashi, oifen. Okay, so oifen, I think, is how we would optin, something like that. Oiftin, oder, or oif schlessen, right? So open, and schlessen actually means to close. So eine Blume, and Blume, of course, are flowers, several flowers. So something like that. I am struggling with the Yiddish as well. V'achar kach, and after that, as he is watching this in the dream, hivshilu, they started to ripen. Vehi, and that is, so here we go. This is Aramaic here, which I believe is in the Targum. Kad, which means when. Kad efrachat, when it flowered. Apikat lav levin, it brought forth buds. So Adkan could mean the end of the quote, or Adkan Targumo Shel Porachat. This is the Aramaic translation of Porachat, Shel Porachat. Nates, and we've got the word nates. Gadol mi perach, it is larger. Now, again, if we're translating perach as a bud, then it makes more sense. If we translate it as a flower, it means bigger than a flower. But it could be a developing bud into a flower. Ki dichtiv, and it says, he gives some examples again elsewhere in the Bible. Isaiah looks like chapter 18. Uvoser gomel yeh nitza. So I think the subject is its nitzim, its blossoms became or produced unripe grapes. Uchtiv, and likewise in Numbers 17, this is in the mutiny of Korach. Vayotze perach, this is where Aaron took the rods, right, from all the tribes, and it says, and it brought forth a perach, okay? So again, understanding perach here as a bud, v'hadar vayatzet sit, and after that, hadar means after this, vayatzet sit, and blossoms sprung forth. So it has to do, obviously, with the development of the fruit of whatever the plant is. Let's go back. Okay, back to here. He keforachat alata. So we're saying that it was in the as he was watching it, it was producing buds and flowers and ripening, as you'll see. Hivshilu eshkolotea anavim, and its clusters. Hivshilu would be to ripen grapes. So in this dream, he's watching as the buds, the twigs are forming, or the vine shoots are forming buds that are then forming flowers that are forming now grapes and to a point of ripening. V'chos paro beyadi, and Pharaoh's cup was in my hands. Va'ikach et ha'anavim, and I took the grapes. Ve'eschat otam, and I pressed them, I squeezed them, el kos paro, into Pharaoh's cup. Ve'eten et hakos al kaf paro, and I placed the cup into the hands of Pharaoh, into the palm in a way it means, right? Okay, let's see. Rashi on this, va'eschat, right? Ketargumo ve'atzarit. So he says eschat, as the Targum translates it as, and ve'atzarit means I pressed them. V'harbe yesh balashon nishma mishnah, and he says this term ve'eschat or schita here is found quite often in Mishnaic Hebrew. Vayomer lo Yosef, Joseph said to him, Ze pitrono, this is its interpretation. Shloshet hasarigim, those 3 vine shoots. Shloshet yamim hem, they are 3 days. Shloshet yamim hem, they are 3 days. Siman hem, they are a sign, lecha, to you, for 3 days, as 3 days. Vayesh midrashei agada harbe. So there are many interpretations of this, in fact, or many midrashim, and he references Chulin, the tractate Chulin in the Talmud, where they give other interpretations as well to these 3 things. But od shloshet yamim, in another 3 days, Yisa paro et roshecha, Pharaoh will lift up your head. Literally, though, means you'll see Rashi's going to explain this turn of phrase. Al kanecha, on your post, your former post, right? Venatata kos paro v'yado, and you will place the cup of Pharaoh into his hand, kemishpat harashon, just as you did at first. Asher hayita mashkehu, in as much as you were his wine steward, sommelier. Okay, Yisa paro et roshecha, et roshcha. Let's make sure, Roshecha. So, Lashon Cheshbon. This lifting up heads has to do with counting, right? It's the same expression is used in taking a census. In other words, Lashon Cheshbon, it has the meaning of taking into account or counting. Kesheyifkod Sha'ar Avadav, when he counts or takes into account the remaining servants, his other servants, L'sharet Lefanav, to serve before him, Bisu'udah, at the meal, when he looks at who he has, Yimne Otcha Imahem, he will count you among them. Let's make sure I've got it. Kanecha. So your base is basically what it means, your post. Here we are. Basis shelcha umoshavcha, right? Your base and your place, the place which you occupy. Ki im zachartani, and then Joseph goes on to say that, and if you will remember me, itcha, with you, kasher yitavlach, when he does well for you, right? When he does well for you, v'asitana imadi chesed, and do for me this kindness, v'hiskartani, and remember me el paro, to Pharaoh, v'hotzeitani min habayit hazer, and take me out of this house, this jail. So interesting addition here, and we're going to see. So here he is appealing to the wine steward to help him come out, be released from prison. Ki im zachartani itcha, if only you would remember me with you. Asher im zachartani itcha. So the key means in that, or so that you remember me with you. Me'achar she'itav lecha kaf Petroni, when things go well for you, as I interpreted. Vasita na imadi chesed, and please, the na he's going to say, ein na ela lashon bakasha. He says the term na has the meaning of a request, right? Please do for me the kindness. Hare ata ose imi chesed. Indeed, you will be doing for me a kindness. Ki gonav gunavti, because I was stolen, me'eretz ha'ivrim, from the land of the Hebrews, v'gam po lo asiti ma'uma, and here too I did not do anything, ki samu uti babor, and they put me in this prison. Let's see. Okay. No Rashi on this. Vayar onwards. Vayar Sar Ha'ofim, and the chief baker saw Kitov Patar, that he gave a good explanation, or he explained it well, or that it was a good explanation in the sense that that interpretation bode well. Vayomer El Yosef, and he said to Joseph, Af ani b'chalomi, I too in my dream, v'hinei shlosha salei chori al roshi, and I had 3 wicker baskets on my head. Rashi. Saleh chori, again, not easy Hebrew to understand necessarily, but a salwi is a fairly common word, and it means a basket, salim, baskets, shel nitzarim, that are made out of wicker or willow twigs, klufim, chorin, and I believe what it means is when they're woven, they have holes, there are air spaces between them. Uvekomenu, and in our place, Rashi saying where I live, where we live, yesh harbe. There are lots of baskets like this. V'derech mochrei pat, and the people who sell bread, it's their custom. Kisnin means like sweet bread, not sweet breads, but rather, pastries. Shekorin oubli. And I don't know if that's still a French word that's used nowadays to refer to sort of a dessert kind of pastry. And here we go. Again, I'm not real. I think this is hippen. I think this is a nun. Hipfen, kuchen. Now, kuchen we know is from a word that Anglo-Saxon word cake, right? Hipfen kuchen could mean pastries. Letitam botam salim, and the custom is for them to put them in those kinds of baskets, these kinds of wicker baskets. Uvesal ha'elyon, and on the upper basket, mikol machal paro, and he says all kinds of food fit for Pharaoh, maaseh ofer, that were done by a baker. In other words, all kinds of baked goods. V'ha'of, and the birds, ochel otam, eat them, min hasal, from the basket, by al roshi, that was on top of my head. Believe we are good to go on this. Onwards. Vaya'an Yosef v'yomer, and Joseph answered and he said, Ze pitrono, this is the interpretation. Shloshet hasalim, these 3 baskets, shloshet yamim heim, they represent 3 days. But od shloshet yamim, in another 3 days, yisa paro et roshcha. Again, we've got the same expression that Joseph used regarding the wine steward or the cupbearer. Pharaoh will take note of you, I guess is how we would say, or he will count you, or make an account of you. Me'alecha, but it means here it could mean Pharaoh will lift up your head from on you, v'tala utcha ala eitz, and hang you on the on literally it means the tree, or I believe it's the piece of wood that you use to hang someone. Gallows, thank you. I just couldn't think of it. Right. V'achal ha'of, and the birds will eat et besarcha me'alecha, will eat the flesh from off of you. Now, one thing I want you to notice is how bread and flesh, human flesh, are identified. And here we have it. This is perhaps the first time where we see the two. Right? And that's why I believe when it says Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, when we make that blessing over bread and says who brings bread out of the land, it's actually metaphoric for human creation and human survival. We know that the story of the creation of Adam is where God takes the dust of the earth and mixes it with water and creates a human form. And of course, it's like flour and water being combined to make dough. And so here we have where the basis on which Joseph is explaining this dream in this particular way. And so Hamotzi lechem min haaretz is a combination of the fact that bread is something that is sustaining and also symbolic of God's creating human beings. Yes, Judith. Do you need help unmuting?
Sorry. The bracha hamotzi is one of my favorites,
yes.
But because of I don't know, a metaphor of our shall we say very junior partnership with God.
Yes.
In that the way God brings forth bread from the earth is through human acceptance of and improvement, or finding a use for our fleshly life of grass, fire, yeast, etc.
Right. I know the whole process of yeast in dough and the whole process of making bread is really interesting and miraculous in its own way. And again, if one has a transcendent understanding of reality, to realize all those processes are happening because they're divinely made possible. So and I'll just okay, so this is a good place for us to stop at this point, and hopefully we'll finish this. We're actually going to finish the parsha this week, if not tomorrow. So we're right there, and I'm going to stop the share. So any comments, thoughts before I stop the recording? Okay, very good.